Hey, what's up and welcome back everyone to the Warzone, or actually the Vanguard Academy. Today we are showing you the best settings for all things across Vanguard. We're going to give you the best settings for controller, for keyboard and mouse, for gameplay that'll help fix things like your broken slide cancels that feel really awkward and clunky. But most importantly, I've actually got my buddy Foves here with me, who's going to help us walk through all of the advanced graphic settings that are going to give us the most FPS in-game, and also some really advanced things that are going to give us the best looking colors and the highest frame rate possible. We're going to be joining him here towards the end as we talk about the graphics, but I promise you, he is the guy that all the pros are using to get max FPS in-game. He's helped us out with previous videos in the past, and he's going to crush it with us here today. But without further ado, let's get into Vanguard and start running through these settings. As always, if you guys enjoy the style of video where I help you improve at the game, whether it's through gameplay or guides, do me a favor and drop a like on this video and subscribe if you want to see more. So we're going to focus first off for the mouse settings. For me, my mouse settings change for every single game that I play, but the base rule that I always have is my mouse setting is set. One swipe for me is a perfect 180. So set your DPI constant for every game and then change your mouse setting. For me, 2 swipes is a perfect 360. That's totally up to you. From there, everything else is going to be pretty much exactly standard. I don't have any ADS multipliers changes. And then also the mouse wheel input. Some people use their mouse wheel to swap weapons. I think it's a really bad habit that you need to break. I use 1 and 2, but we'll talk about that here in a moment. Big things in here is slide behavior needs to be tap. And then for me, I have my prone behavior on go to. For mouse and keyboard, you have the advantage of using this where you can actually just press one button and it'll bring you all the way down to go to. So if you're in a position where you need a drop shot, you can just spam that button and you don't have to worry about going to prone and then accidentally popping back up. That would happen if you had toggle. If you were to press it once and then press it again, you would stand back up, press it down, you would go all the way prone. I have go to. So the one time that I press my button, it slams me down to the ground, and that's all I have. This right here is huge for both controller and keyboard and mouse players. Have this on off. Modern Warzone or Doug Dagnabbit, the owner of the Modern Warzone account, figured out why slide canceling in this game feels so clunky, and you have to have this on off. It'll prevent you from having so many of those dead slides and you're not getting the slide cancel resets. This is crucial. Mantle stance queuing I have on. I always have automatic of tactical sprint on. I would encourage you to have that too. Sprinting door bash I have on. Walk behavior is toggle. For aim down sight behavior, all this stuff is all going to be pretty standard as well. I'm not going to go through everything, but one thing that I do have is interact behavior I want on tap. So that way I only have to press it one time. I don't have to hold it. That's going to slow down my gameplay. And then everything else, you guys can check through the settings, but there's nothing really worth talking about here. Combat keybinds, I'm going to scroll through it. Do whatever feels best for you. I have prone bound to one of my mouse buttons. It really makes drop shotting very clean. And then I have ping bound to the other front mouse button. That helps it to be pretty clean there as well. But everything else is up to you, whatever you feel comfortable with. I also bind grenade to my mouse wheel. So whenever I press down my mouse wheel, that cooks the grenade, and then I can aim and I can throw it and then take my finger off and then it'll throw the grenade. Outside of that, that's all personal preference. Same thing with the interface keybinds. All right, so moving on to the controller section. You want to be careful here because apparently a lot of these settings are changing whenever you reset the game. So if your aim feels like different, you might give this a double check because I definitely just had some of my settings radically different. But the way I like to run it is 7.7.8 or I rock 6.6.9 giggity. And that allows me to be plenty snappy and fast as I'm moving throughout the map, but it also allows me to still be pretty refined at long distances. From there, everything else is standard except for the aim response curve type, which is also dynamic, once again allows me to be a lot more fast close range, but still really refined at long ranges. Controller vibration I have turned off, and then everything else from here should be set really basically to your personal preference, especially when you get into the dead zones. I haven't tested it for this game, but generally with my SCUF controllers, I can almost put this all the way down to 0. I haven't tested in game, but try to set the dead zone as low as you possibly can without getting stick drift. Over here for target aim assist, I have on, but I have it to the default mode. I don't use precision focusing or anything like that. JGod has gone through some videos on that. You really don't need to go into that. For ADS aim assist, I have on. Weapon mount activation, I have ADS. Apparently it defaults just to ADS, but I do ADS plus melee. So you have to ADS, be on something that's mountable, and then press melee, and then you'll actually mount on it. Mounting is nice, but it will get you killed if you have it just stuck on ADS. Weapon mount movement exit. That basically means that once you're mounted, you could just press on your left stick and it'll pop you off your mount. I have that on. Depleted weapon ammo switch I have off, because oftentimes I'll know if I'm going to run out of ammo, so I'll shoot and then I'll switch my weapon. And then if I have it automatically switching my weapon, then I end up double swapping back to the weapon that's out of ammo. From there, airborne automatic mantle. Once again, if you skipped over from the keyboard and mouse section, this is crucially important. Make sure this is set to off, so that way you have the correct slide cancel mechanic that we know from Warzone, and it's going to feel less clunky than it did at launch. So partial, off. That's all credit to modern Warzone. Makes your game run a heck of a lot better. Automatic tactical sprint, I think it's important. Sprint cancels reload, I have on. Slide behavior, you want tap. It's going to make a lot easier for your slide cancels. Aim down type behavior is hold, and then everything else should be pretty standard beyond that. For audio settings, I've got my music turned down low. I'm rocking the headphone audio mix. I haven't tested this a lot, but it runs pretty well for me. And then now let's get into graphics. Now this is where I'm going to have my buddy Foves jump in. He's really experienced on all of this. He's going to be able to tell you just in little, quick tidbits, what's important and why you're changing it. So I'm going to let him kind of take over, because he is, for those of you that don't know, I've talked about Foves in the past. He is like a PC optimization specialist. So he'll go through not only for individual games, but he'll take you all the way down to your BIOS level, make sure you have your right RAM timings, right overclocks, right temperatures, keeps your PC like safe and sustainable, but also operating to what you paid for. So many of us, like myself, got PCs that weren't even running like the right frequencies of the equipment that we purchased. On top of that, he can also help you figure out, instead of buying an entirely new PC, you might only need to buy one new component, and it's going to radically change your build, which is what I did. I bought a new set of RAM, and my FPS went by like 40 FPS. The guy's a genius. Outside of just this surface level stuff, if you want him to look at your individual PC, check him out. He'll be linked in the description as well. But without further ado, in that intro, Foves.
Hey man, I appreciate that shout out, and again, I'm super blessed to have this opportunity to collaborate with you on the graphic settings, man. It's been super great. The endeavor's been great. You couldn't have summed up what I do better. So now let's get on to the juice. So for graphic settings, you definitely always want to have your game running on full screen. You can also have it running at full screen borderless if you need to alt tab. A lot of streamers have that so they can switch between monitors pretty quickly. We definitely want both of VSync gameplay and menus to be off. We don't want anything capping our frame rate, especially for this game. We want our game to be running at the highest refresh rate of our monitor. So for in Isaac's case, he has the 2721D, which is a 1440p 240 hertz monitor. So amazing. I run the same monitor too, and we're gonna even go into the best color settings also for this, so we can actually get the most out of the monitor. Going down a bit, the only other thing on this specific menu that you really have to worry about is the on-demand texture streaming. For here, this has been causing a lot of users to have packet burst or these weird little input delay. You definitely want this to have this off. Even if you're on fiber or the greatest internet, if you really want to take advantage of having the lowest input delay and not having these weird little interruptions, make sure that this is off.
Because we've seen that before in Vanguard, where you get like the little red thing that says packet burst, and so many of us notice how much that affects our gameplay. What on-demand texture streaming is, it's literally streaming and downloading the textures, the high definition textures from the server. So no matter how much you're actually setting for an allocated cache size, like I put like 40 gigabytes, and despite playing for 30, 40 hours, and still a week later of putting that many hours into the game, I'm still downloading those new textures that could cost you performance in game. And frankly, after turning them off, I don't notice any big difference in quality anyways, so I've got those turned off.
Perfect. Well said. Going on to the quality tab, for quality presets, in order to actually have it custom, you actually just have to change one of your settings down here for the preset to change to custom. You definitely want to be running at 100 render resolution. There are cases where you can run up to 121 or 133 to get the imitation of 1440p, which is great for users that are on 1080p. Going down here to details and textures. For texture resolution, it's actually something that doesn't necessarily also hit your frame rate too much. So if you have a really good GPU, you can actually toggle this all the way up to high, especially for Isaac, who has a 3090. These also, the texture filter, anisotropic, and the particle quality level also add visual fidelity, and you can also keep these on high. One of the bigger FPS hitters is particle resolution. You definitely want to keep this on low, and just kind of gonna go through and skim through most of these settings. A lot of these can be left on to the max, because this game doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily hit your GPU too hard, but it definitely does scale in terms of performance. If you want to have the best performance for this game, it does not compare to Warzone, which was extremely CPU bound. This game really scales with your GPU, so having a good GPU will definitely get you an edge in terms of frame rate. Shadow map.
Sorry, yeah, just to interject there. To be clear, Phobes has gone through, and while I've been spending hours grinding out that gold MP40 you saw in the intro, he's been grinding out, like, doing FPS benchmarks on all of these. So while you may be able to get marginal, like I'm talking +1, +2 FPS by turning off 1 or 2 of those settings, your game is going to look significantly better by keeping them on, and you're not going to notice the, 0.1% frame rate boost it's going to give you. So he has tested all these. You can throw all those things to low, and sometimes throwing things to low actually hurts your frame rate over putting them to high. But these are like these settings that are still crazy optimized to be like the best competitive player in the game, but your game doesn't look like absolute dog water at the same time. So it is the perfect balance, which is what he's shooting for. So it's not going to make your game look bad.
100%. And definitely the ones that we really want to hit on are like Cache Shadows for Cache Sun and Spot Shadows. We definitely want these to be on. These actually provide frame rate. And the one really good one that I actually had discovered on launch night was Fidelity FX Cast. I definitely recommend having this on. It's a form of sharpness. It was a toolkit developed by AMD, and it actually works for Nvidia users. As we know, again, Isaac's on a Nvidia 3090, and these options are available to Nvidia users as well. You can take advantage of this just by toggling it on and turning your cache strength. Isaac has it running at 1.0, and the game looks immensely better. The sharpening is great, and I highly recommend toggling this feature on. Going on to anti-aliasing, again, this Sledgehammer decided to force anti-aliasing into this game. I highly recommend also running this at SMA T2X. One of the weird things about this game is that...
Did it again. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It did it again. Like, we just changed these settings last night, and like he's talking about, like he's probably about to say, it'll constantly toggle your settings. Like we set off of Filmic yesterday, and then we go to put the game back on, and it threw us onto Filmic again. So we want to be on SMA T2X. So just double check your settings, reference this video, take your screenshots, do what you need to do. But maybe check it every couple of days, especially when updates drop, to make sure your settings aren't changing around.
100%, yeah. And for anti-aliasing quality, if you hit show more under it, you definitely want this to be on low to not have, again, the blurriness that anti-aliasing like SMA or Filmic can add to the game. Again, we really want to be able to decipher enemies when we're trying to track them in different environments and different color schemas of the map. And a lot of the time, the different maps in this game kind of blend in, or the enemies kind of blend in with the terrain. So having this off to the lowest with SMA T2X and sharpening allows you to be able to see enemies better and get the most competitive edge. And then make sure that your VRAM usage target is set to default. Coming over to the gameplay tab, now this is kind of where we go into some of the color settings that you can use. They kind of went in depth with color settings actually in this game. You can actually now change the nameplates of your enemies, so that if you were to apply a color filter like you could in Warzone, none, filter 1 would be Protanopia, filter 2 would be Deuteranopia, and filter 3 would be Tritanopia. To your preference, all of these 3 color settings are great, and they kind of just add, again, visual fidelity for your game. They kind of add a little bit more saturation. Filter 2 kind of keeps the game looking very natural, but adds a little bit more of a green tint, whereas like filter 3, for example, Tritanopia, adds a little bit more of an orange tint, kind of makes the game look a little bit more warmer in colors. And what's great about this, again, is that you can actually adjust the nameplates of yourself, the team color, party color, and enemies, so you can actually be able to differentiate between who you're calling out for your teammates.
And another nice thing is, like, me personally, I don't like my colors to be changed, so I just have my color filter target selected to world, to where it just changes what my world looks like. So I don't actually have my interface. See how those colors are all changing? I don't have any of that changing. So all my callouts are still going to be on red ping, on orange ping, but my world looks brighter, more colorful. The reds are brighter, the greens are brighter. It's not as dark and dreary. It's a little bit more colorful than if I were to have just the basic. But I rock filter 2, that's Deuteranopia. A lot of people like filter 3, Tritanopia, but I have it set to world, which changes the color scheme up, and I think it looks a lot better.
Perfect. Isaac runs 120 field of view. This is all preference, either whether you're on mouse and key or controller.
And affected.
And effective. Can't forget affected.
Yeah.
Definitely helps your gameplay. Camera movement. You definitely want this to be at the least. It's weird. This weird intensity that it adds to the game. You just want to set that to the lowest.
It defaults to 100%. So when bombs are going off, grenades are going off, airstrikes are going off, and you feel like you're in the action, it's because of that. So turn that down to least, so that way you're not getting as much weapon shake or camera shake while you're trying to get into gunfights. Motion blur is off, obviously.
Always. It actually defaults world motion blur to on. Make sure that that's off. And then for NVIDIA reflex low latency, in this game in particular, you want to run this on plus blue. This is actually very similar to what's in NVIDIA control panel as ultra for low latency, but you actually toggle it in the game. And we'll also go over the NVIDIA control panel settings here in a second.
But sweet, I think that's everything in game. So a couple things that we can be changing specific to all of our PC players is things in Windows. So the very first thing that we can check is type into your game mode and make sure you have Windows game mode on. That helps basically your PC optimize for PC gaming. Go to game bar and have game bar turned off because that's something running in the background that's going to hurt you. And then make sure we go up to that top corner where it says graphic settings and turn on hardware accelerated GPU scheduling right here. Once again, something that's going to help improve your performance in game. The only other thing that I can think of for Windows that's going to be crucial to everyone else is make sure you go into your Windows update settings and make sure you have updated to 21H2. I was actually just reviewing with Foves prior to this video, and I need to download and install this prior to after we finish recording. So 21H2 is what you want. He does all the testing. He literally goes through and he tests individual graphics drivers, individual Windows updates, and like benchmarks them in game. And this is the best one to run. If you're not sure what you are running, you can go into which tab is it, Foves? I don't want to click on it because it shows personal. I think it's just Windows Update.
It's just Windows Update, yeah.
Yeah.
So you go to the OS build info on the right side.
Oh, OS build info.
You'll be able to see your version.
You can see
info.
your current build, which I don't want to click because it also shows like device information and like unique identifiers, which I'm not sure is bad if you guys know that. So, oh, and one other thing for Windows settings that you need to change for Vanguard is this.
Yeah, so go ahead and you're going to locate this folder in your documents. You're going to locate Call of Duty Vanguard. We're going to navigate to the players folder, and we're going to look for the advanced options file. Now, comparative to what Warzone was, there was a lot of things that we could change in here, like video memory scale, render worker count, and a couple of other things. In here, we actually just want to touch render worker count. The only time you really want to change video memory scale is if you're getting any weird type of dev errors, or you feel like your GPU isn't actually being used properly, or your CPU usage is low. You can go ahead and change your video memory scale. The one thing to really take a look at is the render worker count. That actually, for your CPU, if you are, it actually doesn't matter this time around. Actually, through some of the testing that I did yesterday with the 5600X from AMD and Intel 10900K, it seemed that going from all the way from literally the number 2 all the way to my core count, the actual best value for this was the core count. So for your CPU, which is a 10900K, Isaac, you would actually set the render worker count to 10. Outside of that, that's all that really needs to get adjusted in this file. What's weird about this game again is I thought that you could be a little bit smart about this and kind of just make this file read only so that it wouldn't flip between Filmic and SMA T2X, but for some reason that setting still gets adjusted. So you cannot, even if you make this file read only, that setting will still change. But if you definitely do make this file read only, then the render worker count and video memory scale won't change.
Gotcha.
The way to do this is when you save this, you want to make sure that you right click the file, go to properties, and set this little tick mark to read only, and then hit apply, and you're good to go.
Next, we're going to open up the NVIDIA control panel. In order to open up NVIDIA control panel, you just right click your desktop, go to NVIDIA control panel. If you don't have this, that means you do not have GeForce Experience installed, or you don't have NVIDIA graphics drivers installed, which is probably torching your FPS altogether. If you don't have your drivers updated, that is a totally separate video. Super easy to do, but make sure your drivers are updated as well. Once you get in, go to NVIDIA control panel, go up to the top of Manage 3D Settings, and then you're going to go to Program Settings. And then if you don't see Vanguard in your dropdown, you can just click Add, find the program, and then we're going to go through some things in here.
Awesome. So for this specific game, again, we handle all the image sharpening within the game using Fidelity Cast. Image sharpening is a bit weird, kind of similar to how Warzone is. If you actually apply image sharpening prior to or after launching a game, after having the NVIDIA driver updated, you will actually have these weird artifacts, and your game will start to kind of flash different colors. You'll see like green flashes. So make sure that if you're applying image sharpening, that you're doing it only off of a fresh NVIDIA driver update. Otherwise, for the most part, just keep this off and use the in-game Fidelity FX.
Yeah, so to everything clarify, else, in Warzone, we would actually need to go through and maybe like change this to on and then sharpening. But it's a longer, more convoluted process. And since Warzone is integrating into the Vanguard engine, we're not going to cover that. The Fidelity FX Cast that we mentioned earlier is going to get all the sharpening done that you need to get done. Don't mess with this on top of Fidelity FX Cast, or you're going to get some weird stuff going on across your screen.
Yeah, the game will look extremely grainy. This was tested. We actually tested it twice last night as well. The game just gets extremely grainy. So don't have this on top of Fidelity FX Cast. Going through the rest of the settings, we want, again, to not have any type of input lag, so we don't want any type of sync, especially with a multiplayer game where we really want the highest frame rate possible. And so monitor technology, we want to have that on fixed refresh. We want our GPU to be running at the fullest potential, so we run power management mode to prefer maximum performance. Texture filter quality, we want to be on high performance. You actually don't lose too much of visual fidelity. Switching this in NVIDIA control panel to high performance over high quality or quality. Threaded optimization we want on, and for vertical sync, again, we don't want any type of sync that's going to cap our frame rate or add any input delay, so we want that to be off as well.
And then to the editor, whoever's editing this video, can you blow up this page? I've seen hundreds of these videos on YouTube, and they're always so tough to read, especially on your phone. I can't make this any bigger. If you can make the physical box bigger via zooming in, I'm sure my audience would love you. Other things that we're going to change, and this is getting into a little bit more of the color. Obviously, make sure you are rocking your actual monitor refresh rate here in 240 hertz. And then from there, use NVIDIA color settings, 32-bit, 8 BPC, RGB, and then output full. Some people can get 10 BPC. If you can, I believe you do recommend that, right, folks?
Yes, that is right. Sometimes 10 BPC can make your monitor resolution make it look a little bit weird, but yes, you are right. You can test on your own monitor. If 10 BPC makes it look weird, you can just hit cancel and switch it back to 8 BPC.
Sweet. Next up, this is like the budget filters. You guys used to know I always say like press Alt-Z and then pull up your GeForce Experience and throw on filters. And it would like tank your FPS by maybe like 5-10%, but it looked fantastic. This is a small part combined with now Fidelity FX Cast, which helped out with the sharpening. The sharpening is what makes the biggest difference because it like sharpens the outline of your opponent and makes them pop from the background. That was like a major thing that I used to do with my NVIDIA filters. Like we talked about, in Warzone, you have to go through some crazy stuff with image sharpening and uninstalling your drivers, and no need to get into that. But the combination of Fidelity FX Cast and these settings right here make the game look incredible. It's a little bit brighter. I bring up the gamma just a little bit to plus 1.20, which brings out the shadows so I can see people in dark areas. I bring the contrast up a little bit so that way it's not so washed out. And then I bring up digital vibrance to 80%, and it runs like an absolute dream, and it looks beautiful. The game looks completely stunning. The only thing that I would say, if you are running a PC that, you know, you are, you use multiple things for, like if you want to watch a YouTube video and you keep these settings on, things are going to look a little bit washed out, a little bit too oversaturated. So what you can do is just click Restore Defaults, anytime you want to do something else. So if you're not gaming, just jump in, click restore defaults. Now you can watch your YouTube videos. Everything looks fine. And then just press cancel, and then it's going to bring everything back to your regular color settings. So if I were to sit here and I were to go in and review my gameplay, right? Look how stacked that is. That's like saturation on saturation, especially when you see my face. You can see how like oversaturated that is. All you need to do is go into your control panel settings, click restore defaults, and now everything looks normal. And then when you go into game, just click cancel, and now you've got the beautiful colors that you could want.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. No, this is great because, again, this is just a way to be able to enhance your colors for either, and this kind of will hopefully transition into the new Warzone where you can kind of carry these settings over. Again, for Isaac, he's on a Dell 2721D, which is the 1440p 240 hertz monitor, but don't necessarily just copy his exact settings because, again, this is monitor by monitor basis, so you kind of want to adjust your settings per your monitor. Sometimes going up in brightness and contrast might look a little bit weird on your monitor, especially if you're on a different brand. So make sure that you're tuning these settings to your monitor.
Okay, so here we are in game with all of the settings that we have applied, and we are getting 270 frames per second plus in certain areas with beautiful colors. Everything's super sharp. Wish you could inspect. You can't inspect anything in this game. But even with all these draw distances of things going crazy in the background, I've got 20 bots, and literal bots, I'm not being rude, of actual players, and the game is just running like an absolute dream. All the colors in here look incredible. I don't have, in some of the graphic settings that we changed, default have some really awkward, like visual noise, whether it's dust or it's haze or whatever. But I'm inside of here in all the chaos with all the explosions, everything going on in 1440p with high graphic settings, still solidly over 200 FPS. And this is without having the correct Windows version that you guys should be updating, and without even resetting my PC after changing all those settings. So all that being said, the proof is in the pudding. It runs like a complete dream, and it looks stunning. If you guys enjoyed this video, please do me a favor and drop a like on this video. If you want to learn more, if you want to have your individual PC optimized, your specific specs, make sure they're running to the detail that they need to be running, to the performance that you paid for, make sure to hit up FOVES in the description. I recorded all of this live over on Twitch. If you want to be a part of this action, make sure to join me live over on Twitch. And of course, subscribe for all things Vanguard and Warzone Pacific. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.